What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business by teaching you about sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, and overall entrepreneurship. Everything under the sun. We have, as you can see, we have a guest speaker with us. I would like to welcome with us Miss Angie Manson from Going Rogue. Angie, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. We've actually recorded before. It's been almost a year. It's been a while.
I can't believe it. I know. I was thinking about that this morning. Like, okay, so that was at the end of the first phase one. 75 hard. I don't know. But it was 75 hard in it for sure.
Yeah. It was we were both 75 hard in it. So
yeah.
So for those of you that did not watch that previous podcast we did, that was a while back. I wanted to introduce Angie a little bit. I'm going to read her a little bit from her bio and kind of introduce her. So Angie is from a low-income housing to CEO of Elevate Addiction Services. She started using drugs and alcohol at a tender age of 11. She was growing up in the 24-hour town of Reno, Nevada, and she had easy access to substances, which led her down a road of addiction. An intervention by her family on her 16th birthday landed her in jail again, and it followed by her first experience in a treatment center. Instead of getting clean and sober, Angie actually learned how to manipulate the system. And at 18, with no one to hold her accountable or bail her out, her addiction to criminal behavior worsened until she was facing a 10-year sentence in prison. Due to the compassion that a judge saw in her or had, because he was also in recovery, Angie was sentenced to a treatment instead. And a couple months in, she started working and giving back. And for the first time in her life, she developed a passion for giving back to others and realizing her true purpose. And even after completing the program, Angie continued to work in rehab, both to gain more sober time and to give back to society. After completing 3 years of probation and working full-time in treatment, that same judge erased all of her criminal record and gave her a completely clean slate to start a new life. Angie has found her true passion and purpose, which is to help others who are struggling with addiction, and she is grateful to be put on the path to live her true calling. She believes in doing work every day to be successful, as that is how you continue to reap the rewards. Inspired by her grandparents who always believed in her and her mom who believed in tough love, Angie learned the hard way how to take care of herself and others. As the CEO of Elevate Addiction Services, the only drug rehab in the country that has a CrossFit gym, Angie is passionate about health and fitness combined. She is the host of the Going Rogue podcast and a recent recipient of the Ford's Riley Outstanding Humanitarian Award. Congratulations. That's awesome. With Angie's leadership, Elevate was nominated for and won the Excellence in Treatment Gold Award from Conquer Addiction. Angie was also a contributor to the international #1 bestseller, One Habit for Entrepreneurial Success, and has 27 years in recovery. She has also completed the 75 Hard Challenge twice. She's working to complete the Live Hard program, which is 3 phases. Her goal is to change the world on how it perceives former addicts and alcoholics and take away the stigmatism and shame to show that incredible people we are by providing them the tools and leaving a legacy of self-betterment for future generations. Holy shit, Angie.
The show's done. I mean, I don't need to say anything.
That is awesome. That's what I said. I was like, I saw her bio and I was like, dude, this is going to be a great show.
Wow, right on. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that kind of says it all. There it is.
So I just read your bio, but I want to talk about how, I want to actually back up.
Okay.
Because in your bio you talked about how you're at 16, they put you in rehab and like, you're like, you use this instead of to get better, how to manipulate the system. I want to talk about that. How did you manipulate the system and like what was going on in your mind at that time?
So although I was a bad kid, when you go to rehab, sometimes you're exposed to more bad kids. And so I definitely learned from them different ways to, like I said, manipulate the system. So like when I got out, my parents were like, okay, you did your and back then it was only like 28 days. You did your 28 days, you did your time, look how good you're doing. Full trust, which was like the worst thing you could do for somebody coming straight out of rehab. And because of that, I was able to manipulate them. Oh, I'm just going to a meeting. They drop me off. I'd sneak out the door, go do my own thing. And so I just started to learn how, if you play the game and act like you're doing okay and do the things that they're looking for, you can kind of get away with the bad stuff. And that's what I did. I somehow I dropped out my entire sophomore year of school. I didn't even tell them. They didn't know. I intercepted all the notes, wrote my own notes back, enrolled myself into a continuation school, got the credits for that. So I was very crafty. I still did what I had to do, but I was also very sneaky in how I did it because obviously it wasn't all on board.
Yeah. No, it's funny how whenever we have whatever vices or we want to do what we want to do, how we find that wiggle room in our mind. And it's like, oh, well, now you're really in trouble, but it's like, but we're going to go easy on you. And you just got kind of wiggle right in and you fit into that space and you find a way to manipulate or to get through to where you can get back to status quo, whatever that status quo was before.
Absolutely. And being a young girl, I think older people were more prone to think this poor girl's just being taken advantage of by all these bad drug addicts. And it was like, she might be the ringleader, but she just kind of looks like the poor girl that's being taken advantage of. So, yes, we absolutely learn how to manipulate and work with what we got.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So then we fast forward, you kept doing that. You 18 years old. What happened that got you towards looking at 10 years of prison time?
So again, I was, utilizing what I had. I had met some new friends. I had traveled to Santa Cruz. I couldn't make it work. I got in a lot of trouble, DUIs pending, all kinds of stuff happening. Went back home to Reno and was able to get a job at a local car rental place. And because I worked there, they let me rent the car on cash, which typically, you need a credit card to be able to rent a car even back then. And so they let me rent one of the cars. I went back to visit my friends in Santa Cruz, ended up getting in a lot of trouble, crashing the car, getting it impounded, getting it out of impound, crashing it again. Like, I was a wreck. I mean, I was like begging for somebody to stop me, but they kind of just kept letting me go and giving me a little more rope. And I just kept hanging myself a little more and more. And so then finally destroyed the car and kind of, obviously I was fired. I didn't go to work for like a week. Moved back to Santa Cruz, and it wasn't for maybe a year later where I was doing something else I shouldn't have been doing. And the cops ran my name and they said, wait a minute, you have a warrant in Nevada, a felony even. And I had no idea. Back then, we didn't have cell phones or things like that. There was no means for me to even check or care. And so that's when I realized that the former car company had actually filed charges for embezzlement, which is like a Class D felony, because I worked there. So it wasn't larceny, but because the dollar amount was so significant, it raised it to a higher charge. And that's where I was facing the 10 years in prison for the embezzlement charges.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wasn't even 20 years old and I'm already facing 10 years in prison. And for me, because of the people I'd been hanging around, they were ex-cons. So they were not, I already had like insight as to what would be ahead of me if I went to prison or jail. You become, to adapt, you become institutionalized by the system. And I already knew like that wasn't really what I wanted for anybody, especially for myself, especially at that age. So obviously when the judge offered me a year in treatment, I was like, yes, I'll take that all day, any day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So have you ever talked to that judge ever since?
Oh, it's so funny. When I started telling my story, and this was only in the last couple of years, I was like, I want to track this guy down. I want him to know, like, you believed in me. I stuck with it. I saw you every 6 months for 3 years. I just want you to know. But, it's not that easy to track down a judge. Like, they don't have their addresses out there. They don't want people finding them. I was like, that could be a little difficult to get the home address of a judge. And he's retired by now, so it's not like I could just send it to the courtroom.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably would be.
Yeah.
So, so you get out of rehab. Now what? You do your 1 year rehab. Where do you go from there?
Well, and that was the decision I had to make. So I went back to that judge, and he's like, "Great, you served your time in rehab. You're basically free to go do what you want, but I'm still want to see you every 6 months for the next 2 years because you have this restitution for the car, $15,000 you have to pay, and you're still on probation. So I want to see you every 6 months." And at that point in time, I knew nobody who was sober at 21 years old. Like all the friends that I had always been around, they were, in different states of addiction and drinking, using, whatever. And so I kind of had to look at myself and say, well, first of all, where are you going to go? Back home to Reno, or, go live with one of these friends and then have to have this 10 years hanging over my head for the next 2 years? So for me, it was, again, kind of an easy choice. It's like, I'm just going to stay put and keep working here and giving back and learning more and learning all the ins and outs of the business and be safe doing what I'm doing. So that was the next 2 years.
How long was it before you started working for yourself or became an entrepreneur?
So at the end of the 3 years, the judge released me of all the stuff, and I still stayed, and I was the right-hand man to the executive director, and we ran that program for a long time. Ultimately, he turned it over to me, and I ran that nonprofit for almost 20 years. Well, it was 20 years since I got there. Then in about 7 years ago is when we made the transition into a for-profit so that we could try to, grow and expand as getting investors, and created our own program. But realistically, for me, taking it over as a nonprofit, that was probably 15 years. And then me running this new program, it's been the last 7. So it's been a good 20 years or so.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So this happened from you basically coming into the nonprofit and wanting to learn just to serve and grow and like be in a good environment, right? To stay within that environment, in order to get through your probation and be like, hey, I want to do this the right way.
Absolutely. And then finding how much I enjoyed it. Like growing up, I didn't necessarily, I wanted to be a movie star. I wanted to be a mother. But other than that, my mom was a secretary. And so I watched her working for somebody and just how stressful that was her whole life. So I think in my mind, it's like, I don't want to be that person that works for somebody else. I want to be the person that treats their people nice and kind, and they like their jobs and stuff. So it definitely, like when I took it over as the executive director, I wanted to create that environment and grow it and learn because, I barely graduated high school. So everything I learned was through trial and error. And especially in healthcare and in this industry, it's a lot of tough lessons, but I learned from those lessons and figured out how to do it smarter and better.
And this is the crux of why I think this episode is going to be so special, is because we have Angie here who's massively successful, and she just told you, she was like, I barely graduated high school. She's like, she just learned basically from the school of hard knocks of like having all these challenges put in front of her, and having the grace to finally come to the point where she says, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do what's best for me. I'm going to make these better decisions, and I'm just going to put in some hard work, right? And you've been able to grow something, and you went from having a drug and alcohol addiction and looking at prison to 19 years old, by the way. That's crazy. That like to now owning this brand and becoming like your own brand, right? And helping like countless people. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think the biggest lesson of that, when I look at it, and especially with what we're confronted with in life right now as business owners and trying to get people to stick around, is, I grew up in the era where you worked your way up the corporate ladder, you stuck around, you were loyal, when things got tough, you stuck it out. When things were scary, you stuck it out, or at least I stuck it out. I can't say you, because obviously not everybody did that. I'm the one that's still there. But for me, there was never a plan B. It was always my obligation is to make this thing go right. This is the legacy that's been turned over to me. And so no matter what happens, I'm going to make it go right. And I think that was really, for me, at first, at certain points in my life, I thought, people would say, oh, you're super irresponsible. Why don't you, if this all goes bad, like you got to have a backup plan. You got to be working on something else. And for me, it was like, but isn't that giving yourself sort of like, I'm only in this maybe 80% because I'm preparing for a contingency, or should I just be all in 100% and this is it or bust, more or less? And for me, it was always that, because I had the obligation to my team, to get to mankind, to helping people. Like, that trumped everything else and allowed me to be brave when maybe other people would leave, and swinging that around to where we're at today. Whereas, people are, with the workforce the way it is, people don't want to stick around. They don't want to work up the corporate ladder. They don't want to put in the time. They don't want to, do what you need to do to get to the top. They just want to be at the top because they're told they're that good. And so they just want to short circuit that, get that next viral video or whatever it is, and bypass all the long, hard work, which is really what makes us amazing people.
Yes. No, absolutely. Very well said, Angie. You're absolutely right. Let's talk about when you took over.
Okay.
And all the challenge. What kind of challenges were you faced with?
Oh man, being a drug rehab, you're faced with all kinds of things. You're not dealing with people who are stable. You're not dealing with families who are stable. You have people trying to sneak in drugs, trying to leave in the middle of the night. You have employees who don't show up, who are themselves dealing with overcoming addiction. So they have their own situations that they're dealing with. You have the state of California imposing different laws. You have federal regulations. Like, the rehab industry went through, and there were several movies about this, about 10 years ago. It became a really right place for bad players. They saw it as a means of making a lot of money. So there was all kinds of people getting into drug rehab, very shady, manipulating the insurance companies. This was when Obamacare went in, because, it was mandated that they would have to provide or pay to some degree for rehab. So all kinds of people got in there and started doing some very unethical things. And then eventually people came in and started putting in rules to prevent that from happening. However, being one of the good guys, a lot of the rules that they put in really hurt our business and how we had to grow and adapt and overcome that kind of stuff as well.
Man,
you name it, we've done it. We've overcome it. We've had to deal with it. It's it's a thing.
And what is the decision point where you say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and go for profit in order to change this? We want to brand, we want to do some additional things. We need to get funding in order to put a CrossFit gym in or whatever.
Yes.
How does that decision process, and what was that even like going through that?
It was hard, way harder than we expected. We had ran it a certain way for a really long time, but you're right. We wanted to, we came up with Elevate. We saw how wildly successful it was. We want to grow. We want to put this across the entire United States. I want free Elevate meetings everywhere. We want to diversify. And so we went the route and went through the process, which was very difficult for us to navigate, going for a for-profit to for a not-for-profit to a for-profit. There was just a lot of paperwork, a lot of hoops and stuff. But again, I think I'm kind of used to it just because of our business and how we deal with it. It's just another one of these challenges, like, oh, we got to do this now. Okay. So it didn't seem like terrible, but I know it was actually a really difficult feat for us to do. But yeah, ultimately, we just wanted to grow, elevate, and expand and be across the entire United States so that we could make a bigger impact in the world. And we felt like we have like the secret sauce from our management style. We operate on EOS. We have all kinds of different things we do to tenure. I have about 18 execs that have been with me 10 plus years. So we have full confidence that we could, grow and expand and duplicate this everywhere. So that was the idea of going for profit. But the big surprise, and this was actually harder to overcome, was what we didn't know, because again, I barely graduated in high school, is you are now a large corporation with 80 employees, but you're basically viewed as a startup. And so like I have this weekly nut to keep everything in place and keep going as a new business and as a startup. And like my credit got taken away because now they're viewing you as a new company. Even though you've been doing this for 20 years, you're now looked at as you're an infantile company. Where's your EBITDA? Like all of a sudden the game changes and all these things that never mattered before are super significant. And so that was like the hardest thing to overcome, was being a new startup company with 90 employees to support.
Wow.
In California.
And, yeah, no, you're sitting here talking about all this paperwork, and I know exactly what you mean, because I did go through a lot of it too when I created Delta Financial, when going through all the state's paperwork to incorporate and make sure that it was a legitimate standing business, and everything else that I do was just like, man, this is a pain. this is
It is.
this is a lot of documentation.
Oh,
So I kind of feel your pain.
yeah, lots of board meetings, lots of minutes, lots
yeah,
of
yeah, all the
filings.
board,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
the meeting minutes, yep. So, what was the first thing that you guys wanted to buy? Or what was the first thing you guys did buy that kind of changed when you went for profit?
Honestly, probably the CrossFit gym. That was
Yeah,
it.
I
You know,
figured.
we had been, because we wanted CrossFit as part of the program of getting people sober, we'd been taking all the clients into town locally. And with that brought challenges where people would go out on their run and then they kind of disappear for a little while, and then they would come back from their run, and or they were doing things in the van on the way down there or back. And so it just was like, this is a huge liability. So the first thing we did is we built this big, amazing CrossFit gym right on the property, which has made everybody's lives much easier. It's full access all day and night for people to just go in and lift if they're not into CrossFit or on their lunch breaks. And we provide classes for our staff. And so that was probably like the best investment for sure.
That's awesome. What's the impact been that you've seen or been able to see notice so far
With the working out,
with the implementing CrossFit as part of
huge.
the branding or the help that you guys do?
Yeah, so typically, and again, I told you how it kind of corrupted the industry has gotten, and insurance doesn't really want to pay for residential program anymore. The normal program, let's say you go in on alcohol, you're going to leave on 5 different kinds of medications to handle your alcohol addiction. You're being called sober, but you need a pill to wake up, to stabilize your mood, to go to sleep at night, you know, all these different things. So now you're just in Big Pharma's hands. And so the biggest thing that we do is we take everybody off everything before they even leave the detox part of the program. And that's only like 5 to 7 days. Now we do medically assisted. We make sure nobody's, in danger or anything like that. But when they're not allowed to even begin their curriculum, their full program, until they're off everything, it's amazing how quickly people are willing to detox, and experience some slight uncomfortableness. And so then the first thing we do is we put them right into fitness, because this helps them get their chemicals straight in their body. They be able to get tired, sleep better at night. They feel good, a sense of purpose. And they also don't go through like what I went through when I got sober, is this unhealthy weight. You go from being super scrawny to now you're unhealthy and you don't know how to take care of yourself. And so we get them immediately working out, so they get those endorphins going. They start feeling better. It's an achievement. It's a community. Mm-hmm. But then they also feel good, and then they look good, and then they feel good because they look good. And then it's like, wow, being sober is actually a really good thing. It's not like you got sober and you got fat and ugly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What got you to think about implementing fitness and CrossFit into rehab?
Yeah, so a couple of my guys started doing CrossFit. There was like a Groupon of a new gym, and we all started going together. They all kind of worked out. Everybody did their own gyms. At that point, I was doing like Gillian Anderson in my room. Like, everybody was sort of just doing their own thing. But then this CrossFit thing came around, and it's actually from Santa Cruz, so it's very prominent here. They're everywhere. And so, I went through all the normal considerations of, I don't, at 5 a.m, I don't look good. I don't want my employees to see me this way. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to get fit before I go get fit, because, these people are super healthy, and I need to, get in shape before I go do that. So I went through all the same things that everybody does before they join CrossFit. But it was that group. It was that camaraderie. It was the cheering on, not the person who's first, but the person who's fighting so hard and they might be last. And just seeing the dynamics, and like I realized, and this is back when we were running the old program, just seeing how it worked with me and my team and my staff, I knew that could translate into addicts, because anybody knows CrossFit, it's kind of addictive, and it's kind of has a lot of the same tendencies. So if we could transfer the bad addiction for a good addiction, imagine how amazing it would be.
No, absolutely. That's actually a brilliant way that you made that correlation. I bet you it's super impactful for people going through rehab and then coming out and staying healthy
Absolutely.
And do you get a lot of people that come back and like send you notes or say, hey, thank you so much, you changed my life, or come back and like also help out at the rehab?
Yeah, so we actually have, we do get a lot of that. So the parents or the continuing care will say, hey, there's, flowers and a card up in the office. Everybody go read what this parent said. And then we also do what's called a trainee program. So let's say someone went through the program and they're like, do I want this as a career? Or I'm not sure. We will do a 90-day training program with them where we teach them how to be good employees, give them further information. They help out around the center. We have 90 days to evaluate whether they're a good fit or not. So the majority of my staff come through that trainee program. And obviously, kind of like with me, they like it because it saved their life and they want to use that to help others. So it means
Very
a lot
impactful.
more than just somebody that we recruit from the outside, because it really changed their life and they want to help other people who are like-minded.
That's super impactful. That makes it like an even probably more tight knit community, is seeing
Absolutely.
everyone that works there, everyone all working together, being a part of that program, and knowing I've been in your shoes, I've been somewhere just like you, and this program you're going through saved my life, and look at me now.
100%. I mean, we have graduation every Friday night, and I think every single graduation, that's what we hear is like, this place is different because you guys aren't sitting around in your lab coats diagnosing me, telling me what my problem is. Your only education was gotten in school. You've never even done a drug. So what do you really know? Whereas our clients are like, look, you guys been there, you understand me. There's compassion because we know where you've been, but there's also a level of accountability that we can apply because we've been there and we understand and we know that's the way out. And so they can't say, well, you don't know. It's like, well, actually, I actually do know. And I know that you're stronger than this. I know you're better than this. And I know you can do this. You know how I know? Because I did it. And so that goes so far for our clients. They love it. It's like, it's an understanding that's just known.
I freaking love it. So Angie and I, we initially met. We're in RT together, but we're also in Apex together too.
Yeah. There's a bit of a crossover, but we love it.
I love it. Yeah, and so being in, you have your Elevate that you're running. What brought you to Arate?
So this was a couple of years ago. It was actually in the pandemic. We're all trying to figure stuff out. And I was working with a mentor at the time, and I was in this local entrepreneur group, and it didn't feed my soul in a way. I would go in there, I'd feel like less than. They're all doing better. They're at better places in their careers and their business. I haven't sold a business. I don't have a degree. Like, I like the people, but I just never felt like it was a good fit for me. And so my mentor was like, hey, have you heard of this group, Arate? I think you'll really like it because it's a bunch of like-minded entrepreneurs that are more like you. And at the time I had been listening to the MF CEO for a while. So I was really excited to hear that this was Andy's group. And so that's what made me join it. And ever since then, it's like I finally found my tribe of like-minded individuals that, I've always built the team. Like my team is like me. I've always considered that my group. But sometimes you need to be around other entrepreneurs who are going through like problems of running a business, that you can have somebody to bounce off of and talk to. And obviously Ed and Andy are like the best mentors in the world. So that's what got me in there, and I love it.
Yeah, no, Arate is 100% worth it. It's been a
Yeah.
fantastic group. 75 hard.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
75 hard, and so do you.
I do. And this was another spawning of the pandemic. I was at a place, for me, I was at a place where both my kids were at home. My daughter working, my son finishing up high school, and then they both left at the exact same time. He went to college, she moved to a new town, and I was at a place where it's like, who am I? What do I even do with myself? Like, you get so accustomed to being a parent for so long. That was my identity. That's what I knew the most. That was the most consistent thing where I poured so much of my energy into. So I decided at that point, hey, why don't you try pouring that into yourself? And 75 hard was the perfect means for me to do that. And it changed my life, like mentally, physically, in every possible way. It was the best thing I ever did. Obviously, I've done it. Like I think out of the last 2 years, I've been on it more than I've been off of it. So
Yeah.
with the different failures and the completions and the phase one, so I've been on it the majority of the time over the last few years, and it's changed my life. Like I can never go back at this point.
There is no going back.
No.
There is no going. You feel God mode for one time, you're like, I'm never going back from this. I'm never not going to try to. I feel like this.
Yeah.
What phase are you in right now?
I just got my little notification today. It's like, you could start phase 2 in 3 days. And I was like, oh, am I ready to start phase 2? I'm going out of town next month.
We're going to Nashville.
We are going to Nashville. We got that coming up.
I'm going to be on phase
now
3 in Nashville.
Shoot. You're going?
Yeah, I'm going to Nashville.
Ah.
I'm going to the Friday meetup.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. We're going to be hanging out.
Yeah. I'll be there not drinking on phase 3.
Oh, you're going to be on phase 3. Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah.
So you did the whole Live Hard this year.
I did the whole Live Hard. Yeah, I'll be finishing phase 3 at the end of November.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
So phase 1 sucked. I failed it like 6 times.
Phase 1 you did?
Yeah, I did. I kept messing up the extra 3 tasks. I was like way overthinking it, and I would be like, well, I'm just gonna do some things, and then I'd feel like super guilty. I'd be like, man, I didn't really like write down 3 power list tasks to do. Like, man, I'm really half-assing this, and I would just hear Andy's voice in my head. I'm like, nope, I can't say that I did stuff for work. I'm working all day, but it's not powerless stuff. Like I didn't write it down. And I just kept overthinking it, like massively. And then finally one day I was like, you know what? I'm just get my head on right. And I started waking up every morning, and I'd write out, I need to do this, I need to do this, and do this, knock it out. And it helped me immensely.
Well, and I think what happens to us too is each time we do it a little tighter, a little harder, a little more, just because we're like, okay, I know how to cruise this thing. Which, some people are like, that's impossible, but you can make it as hard or soft as you want.
Yeah.
But I think each time I'm like, I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to tighten that window. Now I'm only going to eat once a day. Like, whatever it is, it's like so fun because you can do it over and over and over and make it a different experience and get something out of it every single time.
You really can. And you can by always challenging yourself and like making it slightly more difficult, it's like a new experience. It's like going through it for the first time. And that's what you're really doing. Yes. Because I remember my second time through 75 Hard, I started realizing like, man, I'm hitting all these different phases way quicker. And this is like really easy. Like it was like riding the bike again. I was like, I already rode this bike. I know exactly what to experience. And I was doing it with my girlfriend at the time, and she was like she was like crying every day. She was like, I'm so tired and I'm so exhausted. And she looks at me, she was like, you're not even affected. Like, it doesn't even bother you. And I was like, baby, you already did 75 Hard once. Like, I already know what this feels like. I was like, I'm sore. Yeah. I'm tired. Yeah. But it doesn't, it's temporary, It's like, I already know what to go through.
It is, and you start to learn little hacks. Like for me, I started getting up earlier and knocking the majority of it out before even like 9 a.m. And I'm like, oh, this makes for such a stress-free day, is because I've already got the majority of this stuff done.
Exactly.
Like, this is great. Like, so you start to learn the little hacks. The water, oh my God, the first time I did it, the water was the worst. Like I'd be chugging water like that last half gallon at 10 o'clock at night and then peeing all night because I just couldn't get it down. Now I've got over a half gallon done by, noon. It's like, and then I'm just stretching that other half out throughout the day. So yeah, you just learn the tips, the hacks, and it gets easier and easier. And yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's a great program. And all my agents, Delta Financial Day, I talk about this all the time. And I have a bunch of agents that are doing 75 Hard that jump on it. And I just can't sing its praises enough because it really, truly is a life-changing program. I've never been through anything that can so completely change your mindset in 75 days, as long as you follow it, and make you a different human being at the end. Like you will be a different person.
Yeah. And I really think the magic of it is the consistency, because I've yo-yo dieted and exercised my entire life. And there was always a built-in like cheat. Well, if you cheat, do this, or it's okay if you do good all week and you just have one bad meal. Like there was always a built-in, there was no ramification for a cheat.
Mm.
And so I never really got to see the magic of the consistency for that duration of no cheats. And then once I did, I was like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
never would have, this has never happened for me before because I've never strung together that amount of time with that much consistency.
It's compounding.
Right.
Is literally the mental effect, your emotional effect, your ability to just overcome challenges, your body, every single aspect of it is a compounding effect. Is
Absolutely.
probably the best way that I could describe it. So
It's exactly true. And it's hard. Like,
yeah,
you and I, for us, it's easy now, but for other people, it's not so easy.
yeah. But everybody can do it.
I know.
It was
I
very hard
know.
my first time. I think I failed the
Same.
first time, did it, and then I did it again. I was like, well, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
so in the back behind you, I see there's a little sign.
Yes.
It's a kick-ass picture of it looks like you.
Yes. That's the point.
Going Rogue. So that's your podcast. Tell us about your podcast, how that started.
Yeah. So, gosh, now that I'm saying all kinds of good stuff came out of the pandemic. So I started my first podcast during the pandemic, trying to reach more people, help more people. And so it was called The Elevate Experience. And I ran that for almost 100 episodes. I'd have people in recovery, business, my staff, graduates on the program. I loved it. But then in the last year, I hooked up with one of the people. I was on his podcast. He's a producer. And he said, I want you to consider maybe you need to branch out and have your own podcast. And at the point, I was like, I almost have 100 episodes. I'm going to go after Andy. He said, 100 episodes. And he's like, I get it. It's your baby. So what I came up with is I turned that over to a couple of my guys that work for me. So the Elevate Experience can still continue on. It's obviously named after our rehab, Elevate Addiction Services. But then I came up with Going Rogue with Angie Manson because that's sort of the crux of my existence. I've always done things backwards, the wrong way, the rebellious way, but it's not necessarily the wrong way. It's actually worked well for me in almost everything I've done. Hence purple hair at, my age and doing what I do because we're trying to say, hey, there is no perfect or normal way. Let's go a bit rogue and go outside that box and see what you can really achieve. And that's what I love. So I like going to extremes, and it kind of explains me a lot.
I actually like that explanation quite a bit.
Awesome.
And I'm excited. So we'll be recording, I think 2 weeks
Yes.
or a week and a half for Going Rogue. I'm excited to talk about that. Because I
Yeah.
do things a bit unique myself at times. And that's
Absolutely.
what I
Well, and that's
believe
what
in.
makes us all unique and different. And that's kind of like what's cool about this world that we live in is you want to inspire others who maybe are a little different or aren't normal or who think a certain way. Like, for example, part of why we decided to break free from that last program is they were like, we want you to, we're going to implement like more conservative dressing, hair, things like this, more like, proper business conservative. And I was like, that's just not us. Like, that's not who we are. We're all former drug addicts, alcoholics. Like, we're a little wild. We're not going to fit into that box. And quite frankly, I don't want to. And how are these addicts coming up the line or, whoever it is going to even relate to us? We don't even look like them anymore. We're not even like ourselves. So I love just, like fighting against the system and going rogue and then being successful in doing so.
Yeah. Just bucking the system and proving them wrong. I love it.
All the way,
I
all
love
the
it.
way.
So Angie, 2 questions I always like to end on. First off, learning everything that you've learned over the last 20 years, 20 plus years of running this, both as a nonprofit and as a for-profit organization, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself whenever you first took over?
Give myself perseverance. I actually have a tattoo of it on my back, and it's just persevere through anything and everything because, it's easy to, I think, run, quit, hide, be scared, but it takes strength to persevere through hard times, good times, any times. And so for me, it's always been and will always be about perseverance and sticking around and doing the right thing. And that's a lot of it. There's the other part, do the right thing. There's been many opportunities where I could have sold this company with two investors who would want, say, 60%. And I would personally make a lot of money, but for me, that was not the right thing. Like, I want Elevate to live on. I want our modality to live on. I want to take care of my team. I want to make sure that we all stay here on purpose doing what we love for the rest of our lives. And so for me, doing the right thing was walking away from many opportunities that I personally could have had for the greater good for myself, my group, what we're trying to achieve with mankind.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And next question. I like, this is a fun one. I got this from another guy, and I recorded them yesterday, and we did it together. Who are 3 people that you would like to have a meal with that are famous and either living or dead? Historical.
Gosh, that's a tough one. Tom Brady, because he is the GOAT, and if anybody goes rogue, it's that guy. They've told him to retire so many times, and he's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. So definitely Tom Brady as the GOAT. I want to say Andy and Ed, but I've had dinner with them, which is amazing. I would have it with them 1,000 times over. Maybe Buddha. I would love to talk to him.
That's unique because he gave Buddha also, which is awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there. I would love to pick his brain on applying a lot of, and I do a lot of what he says in present time, but in this world, like how do we navigate this and create that sort of Zen paradise in all the chaos that we got going on around us, for sure.
Yeah. So you want to stick with Andy and Ed as a combo, or do you want to give a different third?
Let me see if a third would pop up for me. I got Buddha. I got Tom Brady. Oh man, I feel like I need to have like some like really fitness. Well, I guess Brady fits into fitness. I'm going to stick with Andy and Ed just because I think they're great. They're in our present, and so there's a lot we can draw from that for sure.
Oh no, absolutely. I want to say that mine was Andy Frisella. I would just like to pick his brain, just one-on-one.
Yes.
Andy Frisella, Martin Luther King, and Abraham Lincoln.
See, those are good ones. I'm real bad at history, so for me to pull from history is not easy for me. I'm like, wait, didn't that guy do something somewhere? Like, I slept through history class for the majority of my high school because it was like right after lunch.
I would love to sit down and just pick Honest Abe's brain.
Yes.
All the challenges that, like, during that time frame, you got to think of all the massive, like, just craziness going on when he was the president. Man.
Absolutely. I think about John F. Kennedy Jr. too. Same thing. Like, yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
I'd like to
definitely. So, Angie.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on and just having a quick conversation with me. If anybody wanted to look up more about Elevate or just reach out to you to learn more about you, what's the best way that they can reach you?
So for me, it would be Instagram. We've changed it to Going Rogue Podcast. So find me there. You'll recognize the purple hair. I have a YouTube channel now, which was part of the whole rebranding, is to be more than a podcast. It's now like a show. Mm-hmm. And then if anybody ever needs any help, it's elevaterehab.org. We have 24-hour counselors answering phones, responding to texts. Whatever you need, we will get you the help. Even if it's not with us, we will find somebody where they can help you. So those would be the 3 places.
Awesome. For all of you watching, then if you watched till now, obviously got a lot of value. This has been a powerful story about somebody that has been to some bad places in their life, right? And being able to turn to something amazing just through persistence and hard work and just doing the right thing. And this is something that I don't care if you're in insurance or if you're an entrepreneur or anywhere, this is something that you can apply to your business today and understand that you have the power within you. And so this has been the Be the Difference podcast. If you liked what you saw, then do me a favor and share this content with somebody else. That's called a value-based exchange. Based on you getting value, share it with somebody else that can learn and grow from it. And that's what we're doing, is we're trying to make people better in their lives and in their businesses. Thank you so much.